Can you explain the phenomenon of a Chassideshe Geneiva?
There's a story with the Alter Rebbe that we know because the Alter Rebbe himself told it. What is the story? The story is that when the Alter Rebbe came to the Holy Maggid of Mezrich, the Mezritcher Maggid started to play musical chairs with his Talmidim. I'll explain to you what that means very briefly. The minig in those days was that when you came to the Rebbe, you didn't come for a Shabbos like today. You get on a plane, you land on Friday morning, you leave Saturday night. The travel took weeks, sometimes months. So if you came to the Rebbe, you stayed for a tkufa, for 6 months, for a year. And of course you had to have permission from your wife, and permission from your kehila, or permission from whoever was hiring you. But when the Talmidei Maggid came to the Mezritcher Maggid, they didn't come for a day or two, they came for months at a time. So the Maggid had his regular minyan, which was of course only his Talmidim, his Chavrei Kadesh, his Holy Society, very exclusive. And the Maggid wanted that they should do everything together. They davened together b'tzibur, which took a very long time, and they also had chavrusas. And the Maggid paired them up. Each one learned with one partner. When the Alter Rebbe showed up, he was either 18 and a half or 19 and a half. He was very young. And it's a whole story how the Maggid introduced himself to the Alter Rebbe, or the Alter Rebbe got to know the Maggid. And eventually the Maggid embraced him, included him in his inner circle. And as the previous Rebbe says, initially they looked at him as a little boy. Later they looked at him as an equal. And later when they saw how much the Maggid valued him, they looked at him as a superior in spite of his youth. And the Maggid started to move all the chavrusas. He changed all the chavrusas. Everybody who had been learning with their kviyas, and he changed it. When all the dust settled, the Alter Rebbe ended up learning with his son, Avram the Malach, Avram the angel. And it's explained that the Maggid really only wanted to change that. He wanted the Alter Rebbe to learn with the Malach. Because he didn't want it to be so conspicuous that he was arranging with the Alter Rebbe to learn with his son, he changed all the other chavrusas as well, so it shouldn't be so noticeable. When they learned together, the Alter Rebbe taught him Nigla, because the Alter Rebbe was greater than Nigla, and Avram the Malach taught the Alter Rebbe Kabbalah and Chassidus. The Malach had the Gvena Malach. He was not on this earth. So it wasn't difficult to fool him. So Alter Rebbe used to move the clock, so they would end up learning less Nigla and more Chassidus. And the Alter Rebbe said himself, Mayim Genuvim, Yum Taku, the water that I stole were the sweetest. The minutes of learning that he stole from the Mezritcher Maggid's son, the Malach, Avram the Malach, where they should have been learning Nigla and Chassidus, were the most geschmacked, the most sweet, the most useful Chassidus he took. Now I believe that the Sikh from the Rebbe, I know the Sikh from the Rebbe, where the Rebbe asks the Shaila, Api Allah, Api Nigla, it's Geneiva's Das, how you allowed to do it? How you allowed to steal from a person his awareness? And the Rebbe has a whole hezbollah, Api Nigla, why it's allowed, why it's mutter. And I believe I also mentioned to you in a previous discussion that the Rebbe had the same story himself. And again, the Rebbe told the story by Fabrengen, that the Frierdiker Rebbe gave him the keys to his ksovim, to the manuscripts in Poland. So the Rebbe said the following: it's a halach in Shulchan Aruch that if you give a key of a library to a Talmud Chacham, that is permission to use it, because you know he will. So the Rebbe humbly said, I'm not a Talmud Chacham, but when it came to stealing ksovim, I have the chashash, I have the suspicion of being a Talmud Chacham. So the fact that the Rebbe the Shved, the previous Rebbe, gave me the key, I took this as a raya that I'm allowed to steal. So what the Rebbe did was he took the Hemshech Hayim Beis and he made photographs, pictures of each page. It was very, very, very expensive. The Rebbe used the last pennies he had to photograph the entire Hemshech Hayim Beis. And when the Rebbe printed the Hayim Beis originally in Tafshin Lamed Zayin almost 40 years ago, he printed it from those photographs because he didn't have the original manuscript. It wasn't available to him. Then it was Nebuch on the second floor of 770, and he didn't have access to that manuscript till 10 years later, after the Pashas HaSforim. So also the Rebbe indicated that he stole, but it wasn't mamish stealing, because the Rebbe Rayatz knew that he was a choshud b'davar zeh, and therefore wasn't considered Geneiva. There is a long-standing tradition by Chassidim that the Chassidim genommen ksavim from the Rabbeim unofficially. But there's also an understanding that the Rabbeim really knew that they were being taken, and that the Rabbeim wanted this, that it should be taken this indirect way, like by the brachas of Yankov and Esav, they have to be taken dafke b'mirma. And of course, the classic example for this is a story with the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, that he was a boy, and the Alter Rebbe said Chassidus in his cheder, in his room, for Yechidei Gula, for private Chassidim, and the B'Yuri HaZeir, and he didn't let the Tzemach Tzedek in. The Tzemach Tzedek was 9, and the Alter Rebbe said, he'll get older, he'll be allowed in. And the Tzemach Tzedek persisted, and he cried, and he begged, and he pleaded. The Alter Rebbe didn't let him in. So they had an oven, a hearth, in the center of the house, which had a grate in 4 rooms. So they could warm 4 rooms with one oven, and you could put the fuel in from any side. The Tzemach Tzedek went into another room, opened up the grate, crawled through the oven, then he had the best seat in the house. He was right behind the Alter Rebbe in the Alter Rebbe's cheder. The grate was closed, but he could see the Alter Rebbe. It got cold, it was a Friday night, so the guy came in to warm the oven. He pushes the logs into the hearth, and they're not going in. So the Chacham, instead of looking to see, leaves them right there by the entrance to the oven. He gets some twigs and some paper and some leaves, and he lights them until, of course, there's a lot of smoke, and the wood begins to catch. All of a sudden, the entire fire gets thrown from the oven, sprayed all over the floor, and there's a big commotion. There's smoke, and there's fire, and there's ash, and they see that Tzemach Tzedek laying on the floor of the oven, out cold, in a dead faint. The Rebbetzin came in, and she started to scream. She became very hysterical. The Tzemach Tzedek did not have a mother, remember. This was his grandmother. And the Alter Rebbe heard the commotion, so he came out of his cheder, he came into the room where the Tzemach Tzedek was laying. And she started screaming at her husband, "Guck, was getroffen." Sie schien getroffen an Unglück. We almost had a tragedy. And she was complaining to the Alter Rebbe why he's being so resistant. Why doesn't he let the Tzemach Tzedek come into the Chassidus? Alter Rebbe put his heilige hand. Alter Rebbe put his holy hands on the Tzemach Tzedek's head, and the Tzemach Tzedek came to. He was revived. And the Alter Rebbe said, no. And he said like this: the Torah is nikni geworden b'tei chasneh. We got the Torah from the burning bush. Because Torah darf man keinen sein mit Mesiras Nefesh. To get the Torah in a way of Kinyan, you have to have Mesiras Nefesh. Muftachani az evet meidach yomam zayin. I have trust. I know for sure they'll live long. But Torah has to be nikne with Mesiras Nefesh. Again, the same idea that the only way that Tzemach Tzedek could get this was by not being allowed. And Chassidim have always been involved in Chassideshe Geneiva. We know stories that Rebbe mentioned by Fabrengen that some of the people who assisted in Chassideshe Geneiva were their own Rebbetzins. That the Rebbe Rashab had Ksavim, the Chassidim used to steal the Ksavim. One of the people who would help copy the Ksavim was the Rebbe Tishtener Sari, his own Rebbe. Now, of course, if it was Neged Aratzen, if it was something that would have upset the Rebbe Nishmas Eden, his wife would not have participated in it. In other words, the idea of a Chassideshe Geneiva is Taka Chassidish. Which leads us to the point that there's a difference in Chassideshe Geneiva and Geneiva in the name of Chassidus. The Rebbe once by Fabrengen got very, very upset because Bachem had put a bug in his room to listen to the Yechidus. So I heard that when the Rebbe heard about this bug, he was very upset. And the first thing he did was he asked for the Shmei V'Shem Imai of the Bachem who put the bug. He wanted to know their names. He wanted the shouldn't Chas Hashem Shat Nakpeda. He pushed davened for them that they shouldn't be affected adversely by the fact that the Rebbe got upset. Imagine that. But by Fabrengen Shabbos, the Rebbe cried and screamed, and this is the expression that I heard. Avraham Parish, who stole Chassidus, him was negeya every maim and every word. Oh, but little birds, you haven't even opened your eyes yet. What are you stealing? What do you understand? And the concept of Chassideshe Geneiva has become terribly distorted. And the biggest example of the distortion of Chassideshe Geneiva is that if you have something of value from the Rabbeim, the meaning of Chassideshe Geneiva is I should take it from you. That was never the meaning of Chassideshe Geneiva, take what you own. Chassideshe Geneiva was I borrowed a ksav, I copied it, and I put it back. Why would I take your ksav? It's not mine. That's Geneiva. I remember years ago, Rabbi Greenglass was begging in the Kfar Chabad magazine that people should have Rachmanas on him and give him back the letters that were stolen from him. So that's the difference in Chassideshe Geneiva and a Geneiva in the name of Chassidus.